Hello, welcome to our RecapPlus channel with me, Matthew. Today we will watch a recap movie called Black 47, released in 2018. This is a spoiler content video. So please turn on the subtitle and let's start the story. The story opens with Samiti, a former military veteran, interrogating a young man suspected of rebellion. Their discussion about loyalty takes an unexpected turn, with the young man's provocative words leaving Samiti shaken. The scene then paints a grim picture of the famine, depicting daily burials and the grim wait for many. Our protagonist, Martin, is introduced as a special soldier who recently returned from wars in Afghanistan and India. He encounters his uncle, a government land clerk, and inquires about his mother and brother. Tragically, Martin's younger brother had been executed for a crime he committed. Martin meets Ellie, a widow who was once married to his brother. They return to Ellie's home, where Martin meets her children. Witnessing their dire circumstances, Martin urges Ellie to consider relocating to America, believing there's little worth defending in their homeland. He also proposes marriage to build a new family. The following day, Ellie guides Martin to visit his mother and brother's graves while recounting the tragic events that led to their deaths. The government's offer of soup in exchange for taxes had dire consequences. Those who frequently consumed the soup accrued more debt, leading to dire outcomes. Martin's mother, refusing government aid, succumbed to starvation during winter, and his brother was hanged for attacking a government official seizing land from indebted residents. Martin realizes that indirectly, government policies have shattered his family. Upon returning home, Martin finds Ellie's house surrounded by a nobleman and soldiers. Ellie and her children resist, leading the soldiers to forcibly enter. With an overwhelming debt, Ellie's family faces servitude to the nobleman. Martin, intent on settling their debts, is ignored, and the soldiers only want to enslave Ellie's family. As he intervenes, Martin is arrested and taken to an army base camp, where his well-crafted weapons raise eyebrows among the soldiers, hinting at his exceptional skills. As the commander pressed for Martin's true identity during the interrogation, Martin remained calm and silent. Then, with the backdrop of intense music, Martin sprang into action, swiftly dispatching the soldiers at the base. His skills made short work of them. Afterward, Martin returned to Ellie's house, finding it in disrepair due to the soldiers' intrusion. The house had been left vulnerable to the cold, and Martin faced the heartbreaking sight of Ellie, frozen to death while clutching her children. As night fell, Martin tended to his own wounds. Meanwhile, Samiti, now in jail for his actions, learned that the person he had killed was not a rebel spy. His reputation as a war veteran was tarnished, and he faced a death sentence. However, a general offered Samiti a chance at redemption by assigning him a mission, to hunt down Martin. The general recognized that Martin was an even deadlier adversary, having been trained as a special soldier for precision and swift eliminations. Back to Martin, who was tending to his uncle's livestock, he sought answers about his mother and brother's deaths. His uncle, aware of Martin's recent clash with soldiers, was intimidated. Martin inquired about the judge responsible for his brother's hanging. His uncle, feeling remorseful, admitted that Martin's former home had been repurposed as a pig farm. He further revealed his inability to intervene in Martin's family tragedy due to the need to protect his reputation as a land clerk. As his uncle made a move toward a cupboard, Martin intervened just in time. Fortunately, the gunpowder had been kept damp by the winter cold, rendering the gun useless. Martin then easily incapacitated his uncle by strangling him. When Samiti and Pope arrived in the village, they encountered Pankor, a soldier assigned to assist in their hunt for Martin. In a nearby building, Martin observed the judge responsible for his brother's hanging. Martin discovered he wasn't alone in despising the judge, who was known for imposing unfair punishments to further his own interests. Martin presented the judge with the hangman's noose and whispered his brother's full name, implying his intent for vengeance. In response to Martin's accusations, the judge defended himself, stating that he merely determined fair sentences and that the soldiers, not he, had carried out Martin's brother's hanging. Martin remained silent, locked the door, and proclaimed that God wouldn't accept any defense to spare the judge. Shortly thereafter, Samiti and his team arrived at the courthouse, where they discovered the hanged judge. Samiti realized that Martin's skills remained sharp, leaving no trace of his presence after each killing, making him difficult to track. Samiti, Pope, and Pankor met with local soldiers also on the hunt for Martin. Recognizing them as central government agents, the local soldiers took them to a base that Martin had burned to the ground. Samiti and his team meticulously followed the trail of Martin's vengeance. They arrived at Martin's uncle's house, only to find him dead with a pig's head in place of his own. Outside the house, they encountered a local resident who offered his services as an Irish language translator and a tracker, as he knew the city's ins and outs better than Samiti's group. Guided by the local resident, they reached the land where Martin's mother had once lived, discovering Martin's uncle's head impaled on a log. Samiti interpreted Martin's gruesome actions as a symbol of his uncle's betrayal, drawing parallels to similar acts he had witnessed among the Afghans he had fought alongside. That night, Samiti and the others decided to rest and built a bonfire. Around the warmth of the fire, Pankor couldn't contain his curiosity any longer and asked Samiti why he was pursuing this mission. He wanted to understand why a war hero like Samiti would hunt a rural fugitive. Samiti explained that aside from restoring his tarnished reputation, Martin had once saved his life during their time in Afghanistan. Samiti regarded Martin as the best special soldier he had ever known. Pankor and Pope fell into silence upon hearing this revelation. The next day, in the stables, a nobleman discovered the lifeless bodies of the guard soldiers. From behind a door emerged Martin. The nobleman claimed he wasn't the mastermind behind the death of Martin's family. Instead, it was the landlord who initiated the political tactics that had caused suffering due to heavy taxes. Unknown to Martin, Samiti and his group were already aware of his movements and were prepared to ambush him in front of the stables. Fortunately, Martin detected Samiti's approach and quickly devised a plan to escape, leading to a shootout. Martin managed to escape using his brilliant tactics, relying on surprise attacks to catch his opponents off guard. Pankor couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger on Martin, secretly sympathizing with Martin's mission to dismantle the oppressive government that had brought suffering to the people. Pope, frustrated by their failed attempt to capture Martin, decided to head to the landlord's location to warn him that he might be Martin's next target. Samiti and his group returned to rest, but during their rest, an unexpected event occurred. While Pope and Pankor slept, Martin approached Samiti, engaging him in conversation. Martin explained that Samiti's actions would be in vain because he intended to avenge his family against the landlord and the oppressive government. He emphasized the double standard where killing one of them was labeled murder while their actions were called war. Martin's words resonated with Samiti, making him realize he had been on the wrong side. Samiti didn't respond to Martin but watched as Martin disappeared into the darkness of the night. The next day, Samiti and his group arrived at their destination. The landlord displayed immense arrogance, belittling Commander Pope and Samiti due to their failure to capture Martin. Consequently, the landlord hired numerous assassins to protect himself from Martin's threats. Outside the landlord's estate, a line of hungry villagers begged for food, aware that the landlord stored a large stock of grain in his barn. Pankor, observing this situation, questioned the guard soldiers about why the residents weren't allowed access to the food. The guards remained silent, prompting Pankor to take matters into his own hands. He forced and threatened the guards to open the gates, causing chaos among the starving villagers. This incident revealed Pankor's noble character as he sought to prevent the famine from spreading. However, it also led to conflicts with some military commanders who disagreed with his actions. At night, Commander Pope meets with Samiti to reveal a plan to trap Martin successfully. Samiti, still grappling with the senselessness of Pankor's death, agreed to Pope's plan. Their ambush was successful, capturing Martin as he attempted to assassinate the landlord in his room. Yet, Martin's fierce determination persisted. When Samiti received the order from the Pope to shoot Martin, he made a significant choice, opting for a good deed, at least once in his life. Martin, having escaped the ambush, continued his mission to apprehend the landlord and impart a harsh lesson. Speaking in his native language, though incomprehensible to the landlord, Martin conveyed his vehement opposition to the colonialism perpetuated by the nobles and the government in his village. His actions were intended to make the landlord experience the same suffering he had imposed on his starving citizens. The following day, Samiti was sentenced to death for his perceived betrayal of the government. Commander Pope felt deeply disappointed in Samiti for his perceived disloyalty. Just as Samiti was about to face execution, an unexpected voice shattered the silence. Martin hadn't abandoned Samiti, instead, he had returned to rescue him, single-handedly confronting the entire army. Employing a clever and well-planned tactic, Martin managed to deceive Commander Pope and his men. Thanks to Martin's efforts, Samiti escaped, and he ingeniously opened the gate, allowing the starving residents access to the much-needed food. This tactic created utter chaos. Martin found himself facing the army that had shot Ellie's child, with no other option but to confront them head-on. Amid the ensuing mayhem, Martin and Samiti managed to rendezvous and decided to make a swift escape. Unbeknownst to them, Commander Pope had been secretly trailing them, searching for an opportunity to attack from behind. Martin and Samiti continued their desperate flight to the far end of the village. Martin, realizing that his life was slipping away due to his gunshot wound and severe blood loss, asked Samiti to halt. In his final moments, Martin entrusted Samiti with the task of carrying on his dream of reaching America, a place where he believed they could find freedom. The film concluded by depicting Samiti riding a horse on his journey to America, accompanied by a poignant message: in memory of all those who died and those who went away, never to return. This film imparts the lesson that selfishness and greed ultimately lead to tragic consequences and that prioritizing wealth and power only results in bloodshed. Thus, it encourages us to embrace a more compassionate and humane way of living. To watch more video like this, click on the videos on your screen, and don't forget to let me know how you feel about today's video in the comments down below. And at last I will say, stay safe and stay healthy. See you next videos.